Nice, nice. Yes. Here we are. Yeah.
Hi, Art.
It's I'm inside. Inside. Oh, home like a community-wide Thanksgiving dish. I don't know. I told my wife, I said, I'm not. I don't know. Okay.
You were the last one.
No, right. No, you don't.
Well, that's today at 5 o'clock's answer.
That wasn't me.
All the way? Is it a non-functional?
No, well, just put some piping in there. Over these 24, 25 years.
So it's a big ticket item?
Well, $22,000.
Oh, the small computer.
5, 6. Good, doesn't he?
Yeah, and we're talking about 8-inch diameter pipe, about
Good evening. Before we officially get started, I would like to introduce a very special guest that's here tonight. Could you please welcome Hannah Martin? Hannah, can you give everybody a wave? Hannah reached out to Alderman-at-Large Andrew Chesney earlier this year and talked about spending some time with me as mayor and to be able to learn a little bit about what goes on here at City Hall. So I am really pleased that she's able to join us tonight. Hannah is 10 years old and she is currently being homeschooled, and when she can attend school, she'll be going to Carl Sandburg in the 5th grade. She's an honor student and she is a part of the Junior Olympics training program. I understand that she shoots archery and she loves to hunt and fish with her dad. And she is also a lover of all kinds of animals. And we also hear that Hannah loves pizza. Hannah and her mom Ty have a very special relationship, and Hannah is also the middle child, and she has a younger sister and an older brother. So this evening, we're going to ask Hannah to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So we will get the meeting started this evening, and Pastor Steve, could you give us the invocation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and esteemed council. I come to you tonight with an exhortation. It says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 23, have nothing to do with foolishness, ignorant controversies, for you know that they do breed quarrels. And the Lord's servants must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting their opponents with gentleness. And so I think that there's an incredible amount of opportunity in this room for us to accomplish things that would not otherwise be accomplished, because these are some of the most honorable people that I know in leadership. And so, Father, we thank you right now that there is a power and there's an opportunity that's available in this room because of the humility and the attitude of a servant that is amongst all of these council folks and all these leaders in this room. Father, we thank you that as they submit themselves to your divine leadership, that there's going to be, that opportunity is going to be realized in this room, that there is going to be discussion done with pure hearts, that there is not going to be a quarrelsome attitude of any kind, and that all of the comments and all of the people that are a part of this great city, of this great government, that they are going to understand the fact that this is a really amazing place to live and raise your children. And so, Father, we thank you for being so gracious to us in this region, and we pray together in unity in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Steve. So now we will officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderpersons Parker,
Here.
Busker is absent. Brashaw,
Here.
Keister. Here. Chesney. Here. Clem.
Here.
McClanathan.
Here.
And Ross.
Thank you. And I'd like to request a leave of council to allow Hannah to come say the Pledge of Allegiance. Would that be acceptable, council?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Hannah, if you could go up to the microphone and you could lead us, please.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Hannah. You did a great job. Okay, first is the approval of the minutes. However, item number 11 will lay over as the attorneys have felt that a little more research needs to be done. So is there an approval for the agenda this evening?
Second.
We have a motion made by Keister, seconded by Chesney. All those in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from November 5th, 2018. Is there a motion for the approval?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Brashaw. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. The next is public comments. We have Andy Dvorak.
Thank you. I thought I'd maybe just do a little bit of auld lang syne tonight, for what it's worth. Nothing, actually. I wanted to address the recommendation to demolish the old City Hall building. This continues a long and durable Freeport tradition, a tradition to purposely and strategically neglect buildings until demolition or collapse become the only options left. That was true of the old courthouse demolition. It was true of the Germania collapse, and now it's becoming true of Old City Hall. This is especially dangerous for Freeport buildings that earn National Register of Historic Places status. The courthouse did in 1974 and Old City Hall in 2016. In fact, in 2016, city leaders sent Alderman Busker to argue against historic status before the Illinois Commission because they mistakenly feared that National Historic status would interfere with demolition. The Illinois Commission had never seen a community actually argue against it, but they never encountered the all-in spirit of Freeport either. Finally, please have the decency not to mislead the community about the circumstances of this neglect. At last week's meeting, it was implied that Rockford historic architect Gary Anderson supports demolition. Instead, he actually spent the last several years presenting several detailed options to the Freeport Council, most at his own expense, on how to save the building. All were ignored. Alderman Keister made the most blatantly misleading statements of all when he said, quote, "I hate to see an old building come down, but that building is a victim of 20+ years of neglect and improper maintenance well before any of us came on the council or had been involved in this." In fact, both Alderman Keister and Alderman Clem have served continuously over the past 7 years when steps could have been taken to save this building, but neither were willing to do so. In fact, Mr. Keister repeatedly told us how much he hated old buildings. Both Keister and Clem refused to provide for basic maintenance, with the exception of replacing an I-beam on the southwest corner, and since have been joined by additional council voices of neglect. For instance, at one point, funds were appropriated to make simple roof repairs, but the money was never spent. So please don't pretend that you are mourning this demolition. Perhaps a demolition video could be provided for tourists at the visitor center to enhance Freeport's reputation as Demolition City. We can't blame Chicago for this one, can we? Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Jim Berberet, but I would wait to the end. Okay. And next is Luke Gerard. sign up to speak? No? Okay. Then that concludes public comments. So next, we will move on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. All the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and be voted as one unless there's a member of council that would like to have something removed for further discussion. Does anyone like to have something removed? Seeing none. The consent agenda consists of the approval to receive and place on file the reports for firefighters' pension fund for fiscal year ending April 30th, 2018, and the fire pension fund for fiscal year ending April 30th, 2018, minutes from boards and commissions for the Liquor Commission for September 13th and October 11th, the Zoning Board of Appeals October 4th, Planning Commission October 11th, building permit reports for October 2018, cash and investment report for October 2018, and the financial reports for general, library, water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer funds for October 2018. Also is the approval of finance bills payable for the total of $727,311.79. Also is the approval of payroll for pay period ending November 11th, 2018 in the total of $562,176.44. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So we have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Brashaw for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Parker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
and Ross.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And item number 5, we're going to pass, Scott was unable to attend. So item number 6 is the presentation of awards for the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. Manager Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if you want to bring any of your other, no, we have some other people here, but, so this was awarded by the Illinois Department of Public Health, awards a certificate for accommodation of Freeport Water Department in recognition of achieving the highest standard of compliance for at least 20 years in accordance with the Illinois Fluoridation Act, sorry, having problems with fluoride, 1997 to 2017. And it's signed Acting Director, Division of Oral Health, and Manager for Public Works and Supplies for Illinois EPA. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you. Just have a few brief words, and I did a little research in our database, and it looks like we've been fluoridating the water supply since 1956. So we have a 60-plus year history, and one thing with it, with the information that I've looked at from the American Dental Association, one of the ways or reasons of fluoridating the water supply is to prevent one of the most common childhood diseases, which is tooth decay. The American Dental Association feels or estimates that 51 million school hours and 164 million work hours are lost each year to go and take care of these dental related illnesses. And the Center for Disease Control and Prevention named that fluoridating the water supply is one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century. The cost is relatively minor compared to the benefit. With every dollar invested in water fluoridation, it's estimated that we save $38 in dental treatment costs. So this is just another item which the city does to provide for the benefits of the citizens of all ages. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is item number 7, which is a pinning ceremony for Lieutenant Brad Cox. Chief Allen.
Brad, come on up. Stand up here.
This is Brad Cox. He was promoted at the last of last month on October 31st. He started in February 28th, 2005. As far as his education, he has a Bachelor's of Science from University of North Dakota. He's a certified paramedic with the department, has been for majority of his career. He is also one of our fire investigators, in addition to one of our arson investigators, of which we have 3, which we've kept him pretty busy this year. The tech rescue member also, and he's on the deployable list for technical rescue, a hazardous materials technician. He has all of his firefighter certification and is a Fire Officer 1. Also, he's been presented with 2 life-saving awards over his career, which is huge. And in addition to that as well, he's on the Lena Fire Department, the Atkins ethanol drill, which I think I put in one of the weeklies a while back. This was all orchestrated and organized by Lieutenant Cox through the Lena Fire Department. He did a great job with that, and what that does for our community is makes us safer all around. So congratulations, Brad, for your promotion. Lieutenant Cox is joined tonight by his wife, Megan. If you want to come on up, Megan. And also his 2 children, Brody and Jocelyn, right there. All right. So I get this open for you and stick it. All right. Congratulations also. I want to present you with your certificate of promotion. Congratulations, Brad.
If you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome to.
Thank you to City of Freeport Council, Manager Crow, Mayor Miller, Chief Allen, Chief Townsend, my fellow firefighters. Thank you very much for working and everything. Most of all, I guess I'd like to say thank you to my wife and my kids. Thank you for being patient, strong, and loving. It's a long road being a family of a firefighter. But thank you very much.
Okay, item number 8 is the presentation of Traveler and the IPRF insurance proposal.
You say insurance and everybody leaves. All right.
There are copies of this brief at your desk, too.
All right, council, department heads, mayor, Manager Crow, good to see everyone again. My name's Ethan Selsinger with Gallagher. You probably remember me from last year. Department heads, you've seen me a couple times this year. We're just going to go through the insurance renewal this year for this year's property, liability, and workers' comp insurance. Turning to the next page, this is just kind of a nice snapshot of where the city is at from a couple different standpoints. The total insured values for the city pretty much remain flat. Equipment values went down a little bit. We added a couple vehicles, which obviously brings the vehicle limit up, and payroll is up about 4.5%. So this year, when looking at the renewal, if you remember last year, we went with Travelers Insurance. Part of being with Gallagher is that instead of just one program, we're able to take the city's full exposures and assets and market it out to a multiple number of insurance companies, which we did this year. And through all the insurance companies we went through, Travelers did remain the most competitive on the package. As you can see, there's a couple bit of differences on each line, but nothing too substantial. If you look at that bottom line number, it's about 2.5% up from last year, which in this marketplace right now is pretty good given property rates in the state of Illinois from flooding and wind damage throughout the past couple of years. This is a number we are pretty happy with. Going to the next page is comparing your workers' compensation Here's payrolls year over year with your class codes. Payroll is up 4.5%. However, the premium decreased 0.3%. That was a good number. We were proud of that number too. If you look at that red number there, the city's operating at 185% loss ratio this year. That means that you pay the insurance company $1 for your workers' compensation last year, and so far they've paid out $1.85 in claims. This was something we were really fought hard to get, given the losses and the payrolls being up 4.5%. We were still able to bring a decrease to the table. Along with the decrease, the city also will be receiving a $3,252 safety grant, similar to last year as well. The city is allowed to use this for anything safety related. Here's a quick snapshot of the city's program overall. Nothing has changed in terms of limits, deductibles, lines of coverage, everything remain the same. Carriers, again, Travelers was the most competitive, so everything sits still. On page 7, here is apples to apples comparison to where everything is from last year to this year. When you combine everything with the package, the workers' compensation, the crime, the cyber, Gallagher fees, last year was $521,000, and this year the city is seeing a $20,000 decrease to $501,000. Going to the next page, you can kind of see where that red number was I was talking about earlier, the workers' compensation loss ratio. On the package side of things, the property, the liability, law enforcement, knock on wood, claims have been very good this year. The workers' compensation side is where we saw a big hit, but luckily, we were able to still get a decrease on there. Next is kind of just similar to a couple of things that Gallagher provides. Being in a partnership with the city for almost a year now, I think we've used a number of these tools. Sexual harassment training was set up through us and Travelers. Police chief, you guys have been using Lexapol, and I'm pretty sure that's been going well. So there's been a number of risk management tools that we've been working with a number of department heads, and look forward to continue to doing so. Any questions, comments?
So the approval will be, so the approval on the agenda will be it's one of the item 18 or 16. So when we get down to that.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, Manager Crowe.
Alderman Clem.
I just have one question. If we're reducing the amount of people, we're increasing the number of vehicles. I know we've replaced some, we've added a couple, but you're looking at here 8 extra vehicles. Just a question.
Well, we've had an increase in number of vehicles in the police department as we've increased we've added so the police department's actually increased in the number by 5.
Okay.
And he's also added a dog handler, which is an additional vehicle. So the other ones I'll have to pull some strength. I'm going to turn it over to Director Carr.
Yes, the additional vehicles are vehicles that were not on the insurance policy as of last year. This year we were given our list of vehicles and we were told to go through them. And as we went through them, we noticed that there were some vehicles that were missing. Some of them were, I think there was a roller missing. I think our paver was missing. And so some of those items like that were added in that just were missed in the past.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. So Manager Crowe, when I'm looking at the total estimated program cost, that's a decrease of approximately $20,000. And then with the safety grant, does that come up to the $23,000 in savings that you were estimating earlier?
That is the estimate on it. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 9, which is the first reading of ordinance 2018-55. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance establishing an enterprise zone within the city. Said enterprise zone is within Stevenson and Joe Davis counties, encompassing contiguous portions of the city of Freeport, village of Hanover, village of Lena, and city of East Dubuque.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the new ordinance. This is the ordinance for the new enterprise zone. As you're aware, the old enterprise zone expires on December 31st of 2019. We had to submit our application by the end of this year for the new enterprise zone, and this is the ordinance that is being passed at both our, if it is passed here at the city, it'll also be passed in Lena, Stevenson and Joe Davis County, and Hanover as we move forward in the city of East Dubuque. This establishes the enterprise zone, and it is the same exact zone, the same requirements. The exception, we've added now the Galena corridor, some additional land, road crossed from the Walmart, Menards area into our area, land down on Adams, and then land above, right around the Baymont Hotel. And those are all based upon discussions we've had with developers when we attended ICSC.
Questions?
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, could you list what are the benefits for entities or individuals looking to develop within the enterprise zone?
Sure. And that's, well, I'll have to go back to resolution 54 here. My notes real quick. And we'll actually be passing those benefits at one of the resolutions. So what we're doing is it's an abatement of commercial property for 100% for a period of the first 3 years, following by commercial property can qualify for an additional 100% for 4 years, 66 for the remaining for 5 more, and 33 for the remaining an additional 6. For industrial properties, it's 100% of the value for improvements for the first 5 years, followed by assessment years improvement, 50% abatement for the next 4 years. For residential property, it's abatement of property tax for 3 years. Additionally, we waive all fees for inspection fees within the enterprise zone.
Thank you.
The last thing is that by the state, if we get the enterprise zone, they do not pay state tax on any material bought within the state.
Further questions? Alderman Clem?
But they do pay a nominal fee.
They do.
Yeah,
That's
which is very little, yeah.
It's 0.5% of the fees that they pay, and that's how we fund the work that's done within the enterprise zone.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, there's quite a few people have to sign off on this. Does this need to be expedited?
If we could expedite, that'd be fantastic. When we set the time frame up, they knew we had to do a first, second reading, but if you want to waive that reading, that would help. Keith Moran contacted me this morning. He's the one that's putting this together for us. And I know that anything we can do to expedite it would be helpful.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Clanathan to move ordinance 2018-55 forward.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to suspend the rules.
Second. Go ahead, Art.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Clem for the suspension of the rules. Suspension of the rules must pass by a 2/3 majority and is non-debatable. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules only?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney. Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. So now before the council is the final passage for ordinance 2018-55. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan. And Ross.
Aye.
And the ordinance passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 10 is first reading of ordinance 2018-56. Could you please read this?
An ordinance amending zoning map for 2 parcels at end of South 18th Avenue.
Thank you. Director Zupkoff.
Thank you, Your Honor. We as staff were contacted by this developer interested in building a solar site in Freeport. This site in total is approximately 38 acres in size. The developer's conceptual proposal calls for the solar footprint of the site to be about 8 acres, with the remaining 30 acres continuing to be used for agriculture. Because part of the property the applicant wants to develop is currently zoned R3, the proposed solar development would not be a permitted use because of that R3 designation. This proposed map amendment for the property from R3 F1 and F1 to A1 would permit the proposed solar use as well as any other use permitted in A1, and those are listed in the memo as well as in our Code of Ordinances. The majority of the property is currently being used for agricultural purposes, and according to the applicant, will continue to be used that way agriculturally if the map amendment request to A1 is approved. Again, part of the property is currently zoned R3, but the city is not aware of any plans for residential development at this location. According to the city's comprehensive plan, the existing land use of the property was agricultural when the plan was adopted in 2010. The comprehensive plan was hopeful that a demand for additional residential development would have emerged for these 2 parcels, but that has not come to fruition over the past 8 years. And in regards to the proposed solar use, the comprehensive plan encourages new development within Freeport to utilize green technology, including solar energy. And because the current use of the property is largely agricultural and will continue to be, a zoning map amendment to A1 appears reasonable. At their November 1st meeting, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted 6 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 abstention to recommend approval of this map amendment to the City Council, finding the proposal met all the required factors for rezoning, and a copy of the ZBA's worksheet detailing those findings is attached to the memo. Similarly, on November 8th, the Planning Commission approved a recommendation to the City Council by voice vote that the proposal was in line with the city's comprehensive plan and could be approved. We as staff concur with both the ZBA and Planning Commission and would ask the City Council to approve this zoning map amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Director, I'm not as familiar with this type of zoning. I'm assuming that all the neighboring properties had been addressed?
Yeah, they were notified and invited to attend the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing on the 1st of November.
Follow up, Mayor? And if anyone attended, were there any negative comments regarding the solar energy unit?
No, there was one neighbor that came that was, I'd say, confused at first. She was worried we were trying to rezone her property, but once our attorney explained that she received the letter because she was a neighbor and we were not rezoning her property, but the property in question, she was fine with it after that.
Okay, thank you.
Manager Crow.
So the council's aware that while we're rezoning this property so they can put the solar farm, there's still a requirement within our ordinance for us to hold a second town hall once the amendment's done this prior. So that town hall is an additional opportunity for the residents within the area to object if they're not, if they do not want the solar.
Follow up, Mayor. Manager Crow, then, if someone did, say, perhaps come forward and object, not that I foresee that happening, what would the council then be obligated to do?
We come in front of the council at that point from the town hall for whether approve or not approve.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Just looking at the mapping on it, I think you can tell what the use has been, like you said, and it certainly seems like if it's a location that if we are going to make a change here, it seems pretty common sense on that. So let's see. I'm trying to get back to the screen off of where we were at on that. I would make a motion to approve.
Second. Second, yeah.
or motion to move forward, I suppose.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Parker to move ordinance 2018-56 forward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 12, which is the first reading of ordinance 2018-58. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance authorizing the sale of certain items of personal property owned by the city of Freeport.
Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This will be the third time we've brought a surplus package in front of the council here. This one has several items that were actually a part of the first surplus package, with that being all the double-headed parking meters and then the single-headed parking meters. These were all originally stored at Old City Hall and have since been moved out to our city yards. There was some initial thought on not doing sealed bid on these items and instead using a website to sell them, but after more consideration and looking at the man hours that it would take to sell such a thing, as well as the shipping costs, it just makes more sense to us to put these together in a closed bid form of a surplus sale again. As well, the police department has come forward with 4 personal vehicles that I think were part of repossessions.
They were water tests under Article 36, so they were involved in some way with the commission of a crime.
Right, as well as 1 green Cushman cart. And so, with the approval of council, we would like to move forward with a closed bid package and bring that back in front of you guys, maybe the second council in December.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Director, do you want this sped up? I mean, most of these items have already been on our list before. Is it helpful to move this along, or?
It would allow us to meet that December timeframe.
Okay, motion approved, Mayor.
Second.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Brashaw, to move ordinance 2018-58 forward, and we have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Chesney, for the suspension of the rules. Suspension of the rules is non-debatable and must pass by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules only, please?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. So now before you, council, is for final passage for ordinance 2018-58. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. I just have one question for Director Carr. On the surplus sales, could you apprise the council and/or the listening audience how these items will be advertised?
We will have them in the Freeport paper, as well as we will put a copy on our website.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the passage?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 13 is the adoption of Resolution 2018-54. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving abatement of a portion of taxes on real property located in the Northwest Illinois Enterprise Zone.
Manager Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the actual resolution that abates the taxes, as I had previously briefed, and this goes hand in hand with the ordinance that you just passed. And I request I go ahead and be adopted and included into this package.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Ross for the adoption of Resolution 2018-54. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Alderperson Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross.
Aye.
That is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 14 is the adoption of Resolution 2018-55. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an intergovernmental agreement regarding the Northwest Illinois Enterprise Zone.
Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Freeport, City of East Dubuque, Village of Hanover, Village of Lena, County of Stevenson, County of Joe Davis County. It also establishes that the City of Freeport and the County of Stevenson County will have 3 members on the board, with the City of East Dubuque, Village of Hanover, Village of Lena, and County of Joe Davis will have 1 member on the board. It also establishes the mayor will have 3 appointments, one of which is the city manager on the board, and then it also establishes how the president of the board will be elected and how it will be managed between the different municipalities.
Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
motion to approve.
Second. Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman McClanathan for the adoption of Resolution 2018-55. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
And that resolution is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 15 is approval of a bid. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
Approval of bid for demolition and asbestos abatement of 230 West Stevenson Street, Old City Hall. Bid opening was held on April 25th, 2018.
Did you want that or Director Carr?
What's that?
It said both. I just wanted to talk.
I'll go ahead and take it on
Okay.
this one. So, thank you, Madam Mayor. We had 5 companies bid on this. Fisher was the low bidder at $215,276. This does include asbestos abatement. They have done their notification of asbestos abatement and demolition. Moving forward, they are subcontracted with Environmental Asbestos Removal Company as their sub. They are ready to move in and start doing asbestos abatement by Friday of this week if this is approved. I also have been in touch with 2 individuals. I had a request from one of the aldermen to go out and look to see if we could do some salvage out of this. I've talked with Fisher Construction, and they're all right. Fisher Excavating, excuse me. They're perfectly okay with the salvaging, and those 2 members are signing releases to the city and will be salvaging the property.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Parker.
move for approval.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the bid. Is there further discussion?
You want over?
After you.
Okay.
Alderman
Mayor-
McClanathan.
Mayor, thank you. Manager Crowe, if I could just walk you through a series of questions
Sure.
related ultimately then to the demolition bid at the end of the day. Now, there's a lot of history that I think went into the decision to leave the old City Hall, and frankly, I'm not privy to all the factors on it, but if I recall, there were, back in about 2011, 2012, when the decision was made to leave the old City Hall, there were a variety of aspects that were looked at regarding structural maintenance and safety issues. Is that correct? Did you have information on those?
That's correct. We had OSHA had a filing against the city due to black mold and other issues. There were structural, actually swimming pools. There were holes in the roof that swimming pools were put in to catch the water, and then they were drained as the water, rather than repairing the roof. There was a structural, one of the I-beams was deteriorating and is still deteriorating. Gary Anderson came in and did an assessment in 2011, estimated that the repair of the old City Hall was in the area between 2.5 and 2.8 million. McClure did an assessment first in December of 2012, and then again in 2013 to determine that the building was unstable and should not be remained in. And I believe that is somewhere in that time frame is when the city moved over to 524.
Could I have some follow-up, Mayor? Or Tom, do you want to step in first?
No, you're
Okay.
doing fine.
Okay. And then after that, for a period of years, City Hall was, we were renting a space over at that 524 building, correct?
That's correct.
Then about 3.5 or so years ago, 3 to 3.5 years ago, there was analysis regarding our basically three main options: continue to rent at a certain fee, rehab the old City Hall and go move back into it, or rehab and repurpose this building, with the costs being a little bit north of $2 million for rehabbing this building, and the costs between Prairie Forge and, or the estimates between Prairie Forge and Winter Construction at that time in the range of $4 to $5 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. So this building, the initial estimate on this building was $2.3 million. Prairie Forge estimated the replacement of the roof on Old City Hall was just under $800,000, and then Winter Construction, because Winter Construction also looking at the McClure report, made the recommendation to pull out the mezzanine deck or reinforce it. It was actually $3.8 million.
And it was around that time that you referenced that figure from Prairie Forge. That was the same budget year that we had actually, I think it was somewhat referenced earlier tonight, we had placeholded about $150,000 for roof repairs, and then subsequently we got this estimate from Prairie Forge of just south of $800,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You came on board, and over the last 18 months, you were tasked with seeing if there were individuals that were interested in developing the building outside of us using the building, correct?
That's correct.
And once we've established residence here at City Hall, practically speaking, was there a purpose for us as a government entity of use of that old City Hall?
No, and I think there was a misunderstanding based upon the citizens' comments. What the comment from Gary Anderson was that he viewed the old City Hall only in his plans only to be good for two items, and that was more office space or to be a City Hall, and that's what he gave. So this was actually the building that the state was more interested in saving, because this is the oldest Carnegie library in the state of Illinois.
And it was significantly cheaper to rehab this building.
It was.
So go through the process of what you've done over the last 18 months, looking at developers or interested parties to be able to take the building and rehab it.
So we went ahead and listed it on CoStar, which is CoStar Blue, which is a commercial property listing agency. Then I did meet with the Save City Hall. They got me in contact with both Gary Anderson and Landmark. Gary gave me two developers that specialize in historic City Hall, restoring historic buildings. Both of them, one is out of Wisconsin. Both of them came down and looked at it and felt the cost per square foot was too high. I then contacted some other developers. We've had a total of 6 developers, including a developer out of Rockford that does a lot of their historic buildings, and his estimate was in the area of about $175 per square foot when he looked at the hotel, and he said even with the current historic tax credits he couldn't make. And we had a developer come in, look at it, and the financier was not in favor of moving forward on that. I will say that Luke Gerard, who's in here, did approach me on Friday about doing something with the building.
To this day, have you come into contact with any entity that actually has been able to demonstrate a workable RDA coupled with financing for this building?
Not at this time.
And do you believe, in your opinion, is there, would the further passage of time serve a realistic interest in having something appear along those lines?
No, I believe that this is the best option from both a financial standpoint and a safety standpoint.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, Manager Grohl, can you, or will you let the community know that what we have done to prevent this to happen to this city hall, as for neglect to the building itself?
So when I took over, the first thing we've done is we've established maintenance contracts for the elevator, for the roof, for all the HVAC, for all the electrical systems, and place that. And the other thing we see is, as soon as we see a leak appears, we bring somebody in. And we've had some small leaks issues. I've gotten to know Paul by first name, and he even came in personally, took a look at one of them for Paul Hafer. So, and then sent his brother in because he couldn't figure it out. So both Paul and Doug have been in here. So anytime we see a leak, we see a discoloration, we immediately go after it. The same thing, we had some issues with drainage, and we've immediately gone after it. We also have, if we have a disaster contract, that if we have flooding in the building, they come in and do a refurbishment on that end, dry out the carpets. So we've already installed a maintenance to maintain this building.
Great. One more, Mayor. Follow up, please. Now, in the old City Hall, there are a lot of, it's a historical building, and there's a lot of history in that building also. Instead of, not to say instead of, but there's some there's some items in there, instead of selling them, don't you think we may want to put them in here as for the history?
Well, we can work with, we don't have the expertise to salvage these,
Right.
And so I went out and have talked with the people that do have the expertise to salvage them, and they're going to salvage them. And I'll talk with them as we go forward if there are particular items that we might be able to put into City Hall. Some of those old doors, though, these are specifically set up, and whether we actually put them where we could put them would be a question.
Okay, follow up, Mayor. Because basically, I was speaking of the plaque that was on the wall that's been there since I've been a kid, and it's pretty unique.
We can get that plaque.
Good deal.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
Yes, thank you. It's been a long trip to get to where we're at right now. Alderman Clem and I were both in on the ground floor on this when it first started. There's been a lot of going back and forth, and yes, some feet dragging and some other stuff going on. I can tell you that some of the proposals that have been brought up to us were touted as being feasible and stuff, but I know on several occasions when questions were asked to the person putting them out, point blank, as to the practicality and stuff, I know, and I hate to bring the name up of Mr. Gallagher, they keep bringing him up on his, for how well he did, but I know that when he had his proposal, I sat there for 15, 20 minutes on the council floor with his proposal in front of me and asked him many, many questions on that. And to this date, he has never given me a straight answer on it. Nobody really, despite what was said earlier, nobody really wants to see an old building tore down. But I feel with everything we've done and the time we've taken to get to this point, I feel that we've done everything that we can do to try and save that building. Short of maybe having a group make a GoFundMe page and pay for it from themselves. That's the only thing I could think of that would be able to do it. So I felt comfortable with recommending this action in the first place, and I feel comfortable with voting for it. You never want to see an old building come down, but sometimes you just have to. And having been through that old City Hall a number of times, saving it is going to be a very difficult task at best.
Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
A lot of the stuff that was brought up tonight is true, but I would like to say this to many of the people out there that may be second guessing us or may be saying we didn't do this or didn't do that. Keep in mind there was a reason that we moved out of City Hall to begin with. That's the thing everybody forgets. There were electrical issues, there were HVAC issues, there were mold and mildew issues. Sure, how they got there was not the best way due to the description of how some of the water was stopped and that kind of stuff. But there was a reason that we move out, and also keep in mind that while this process went on, 2 or 3 different times we put money into that building to make it stable, that it wasn't falling on the one end. There was a new beam put in, there were cement walls put in downstairs, there was a lot of work done. Also keep in mind what it's cost us to heat that building over the last X number of years. If you walk over there right now, there's heat in City Hall. If we'd absolutely wanted to destroy the building, guess what? We'd have never heated it. We'd have never walked through it as many times as Manager Crow, Engineer Gallagher, as much as Dennis has walked through it. But it is a sad situation. There's no doubt about that. A lot of factors go into it, but everybody comes back to the same factor of there's a lot of square footage there, and to use it properly is extremely hard to do, especially with tearing the mezzanine out and everything else. Also, while we were in it, keep in mind that anybody that was in the old City Hall, it's one of the worst laid out buildings that there ever is. As you walk in the front door, you lose instantly hundreds of square feet just in the front staircase going up. And when you got up into the top part of it, there was nothing more than a lot of small rooms and a lot of rooms that were added onto over the period of time. Also keep in mind, while we were there, Township was in there. Township moved out of there, and as we looked at different times of rehabbing this, keep in mind also one of the discussions that came up in that period of time was consolidating 911. To me, that would have been an ideal place to take a look at putting 911. Plenty of square footage in the front of it, could have been totally rehabbed and all that kind of stuff. So it isn't as though, as we went along the line, nobody ever took a look at this and just left it go downhill. I know that Lowell has worked on getting people there. One other thing, please keep in mind, it's one thing to say, I want that building. It's another thing to come up with the finances for it and a plan for it. And the last thing the city of Freeport needed to do was hand it off to somebody that didn't have a proper plan or something to do with it, and it would sit there another 10, 15 years in this condition. So I guess all I can say is, we're here where we're at, and we just need to move forward, whatever the decision of the council is.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
It's been nearly 4 years that I've been on the council, and one of the first items that was debated in this council, and former Mayor Jim Gitz, we unanimously agreed that we were going to make a decision on moving to either former City Hall or the Carnegie Library. And we were able to achieve agreement, and I think most people are very pleased with the outcome that we were able to deliver. But I think it's also important for those that are viewing at home and those in the audience to understand that this challenge or problem, and Alderman Keister is correct, is with decades of neglect that was not the decision of anybody in this chamber. We've had now three mayors and one city manager over almost a decade that have attempted to sell this building. This building was also, in addition to being put formally for sale, I think shortly after Mayor Miller took office and was an agreement by the city council, was even offered incentive dollars to help offset some of the upfront costs of rehabbing this building. So several $100,000 were on the table and available to any investor that would take this building in exchange for rehabbing it and putting it back to a good use. And I think we've had, Manager Crow, now 6 or 7 investors that have come through this building and said that it's not going to work. The numbers just don't work. We've had a number of city councils. We've had 3 mayors. and we've had one city manager that are all reaching the same conclusion. And for those that have been very loud and vocal in an attempt to save this structure, have never come up with one plan to ever save it, other than just to say that's our job. And we've attempted on a number of occasions to attempt to save it. We've had now 3 mayors, 1 manager, different bodies of the city council, members of the public, offered hundreds of thousands of dollars in infusions to get this project up and going, and not one taker over the course of a number of different administrations. So I recognize this body's leadership, and this will be one of the final votes that I will take on the city council. But I recognize the leadership of this body, Manager Crow and Mayor Miller, for making the tough decisions. But also I think it's very important to know that it was not this body that put the fence around City Hall, and it was not this body that thought it was wise to put swimming pools in the rafters as a way to eliminate their problems, which are still here today. But it is this body that will show the leadership necessary to make the tough decisions, because we ask our citizens in the city of Freeport to maintain their properties. And downtown buildings that are privately owned would never be allowed to have a fence around their building for nearly a decade. So for a number of reasons that I outlined tonight, I will support the demolition of City Hall. Not because I want to, or not because I believe this body wants to, but because we're forced to. And we're forced to because of the bad decisions that were made in previous administrations and the neglect that was well past a decade, where none of us in this chamber were ever elected. But we are here to clean up their mess.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
before we vote on this, if I may bring up one more point that I'd like to just kind of throw out there. Once we demolish the building, what are we going to do with the land? Has there been given any thought on that, or what's going to happen at that point?
So we'll look at a couple different options as we go forward. Anytime you demolish that type of building, much as we've demolished the building across from the fire station, we need to let it sit for a year to let it settle before we can go forward. So at that, we'll look at what we need to do, whether it's a park, whether it's some additional downtown parking, if it's what's the best, and it'll be part of our comprehensive plan as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. The listening audience knows how much time and effort we've put into this one building, and a lot of us will mourn the demolition of Old City Hall, including myself. A lot of you know I've had ties with that building. I've also been on boards and commissions where I've helped work to save old buildings. This building at this time, I don't believe can be saved. It is derelict now, and it is so run down. And as Alderman Chesney said, not to the fault of this administration or the current council. Unfortunately, we can't save every building. I rejoice in the fact that we did save this old building that we are in now, and the Carnegie is also a historic building in Freeport. And as much as I would like to save the other building, I don't think it's going to happen. I do have a few constituents that have called me on it, and one of them who called me today was hoping that we would take a picture of the old painting on the ceiling. I know there are some of those paintings that exist somewhere, and I hope she forgives me using her name, but Ms. Mary Maves is the person I'm addressing, and it was her great-grandfather that painted that picture. So she was hoping someone would make sure they had that picture. I don't have a copy of it, but I'm sure someone here would have access to that. I want to thank the Save the City Hall group of people and concerned citizens who did their very best to save this building, who may have been a little vocal with us sometimes, but they were doing what they felt was their due diligence to save a building that they cared about. They did get it registered on the historic registry, and it is a shame that it didn't come to fruition to save the building. But I do commend their efforts in fighting for what they care about. We all need to have those things that we want to fight the good fight for in town, and I did feel like I fought the good fight too for the old City Hall, and it didn't work out. So we need to move on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the adoption of the bid?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Aye.
Chesney. Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 16 is the approval of the quote from Gallagher for travelers.
Mayor,
But there's nothing else we can do.
motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the quote. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 17, the approval for the quote for repairs on the Hancock digester. Director Kopansky.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. During September, I came here to make mention and get the approval to go and clean one of the two digesters. That task was done during October, last half of October, first part of November. Once the digester was cleaned, we were able to go and do a visual observation as to what repairs needed to be done. One of the items that needed to be done is to go and replace some pipe that is inside this digester, and it's in a very inhospitable environment, and over the last 24 years, a good portion of the pipe has disintegrated. So what we need to do to go and get the digester back in service is to go and replace this pipe and then put the digester back in service. With the quotes that I had someone to go and get, there's two local firms, Mechanical and Lusher, and for the work that needs to be done, Mechanical had the lower of the two quotes, which is for an amount of $21,703. We're looking to go and get approval to then have them come on in to do this work to go and get the digester back in service.
Questions for Director Kopansky?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Clem, seconded by Alderman McClanathan for the approval of the quotes. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
just one quick question. You may have said it, and I may have missed it, but funding for this is available now?
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll for the approval?
Parker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mayor?
Yes.
I was late today due to being out of town and stuck in traffic, but I understand Attorney Zito wanted to talk to me about this item prior to it, and if I would like to ask permission to have a few minutes to discuss this with him prior to moving on to it.
Manager,
Recess momentarily.
you want to do the guys do the minutes thing? The minutes thing, so those guys can leave, or are they not going to present? Okay. You're just here watching us. Watching democracy in action.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, she can. You know, what I would do, the outstanding thing is having the notification 40 days before the rest of it.
I think, yeah, so let's just get this on. If, let's ask, I want to ask the question first. Whether people are going to choose themselves. And if it's three, then let's just get it on. And then we're going to have to figure out what that.
Yeah, 'cause I will be, in case we lose
If you don't mind.
Whether you like it or not, that's.
Right.
Well, have you got some others you can bring in?
Well, actually, do you mind, I mean, if it comes up, sure, I'm gonna take 15 minutes and kind of give a little.
No,
If you don't mind.
please do.
I did that at my.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Like I said, that's what I said to you, I'm intelligent older. Sure.
Okay, so item number 18 is the discussion of the levy proposal, and Attorney Zito would like to make a comment first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick note. So on this agenda item, the council is going to be asked as a part of the tax levy process to move forward with an estimated levy amount, and that's just part of the statutory process. There, just so that you guys know, this estimate has to move forward with by a majority vote of the corporate authorities. So just so you guys know, that just means a majority of the corporate authorities is a majority of 9, so that is 5. So ultimately, whatever proposal the council moves forward with, it has to be approved by a vote of 5 to move it forward. Okay? The approval can just be done by a motion.
Mayor,
Alderman McClatchy.
just a clarification on that too then. That's for tonight's purposes. Is that also the same requirements on the final vote on the levy down the road?
Ultimately, with the tax levy, that's an ordinance, so that would be a majority vote also.
Okay.
Okay, Manager Crow.
All right. So, my lapel mic is dying, so I'm going to use the regular stand mic. So, all right. So, this was based upon what came out of the committee of the whole. You asked me to go back and look at 3 proposals as we go forward, and look at some other information as we additionally came out of that meeting. So as we talked about, there's a change in assumptions which has increased our unfunded liability, and I will tell you that that we have been sharing articles back and forth. We are not the only community that's going through this right now. Peoria voted. Their council voted to lay off 12 police officers, or 12 firefighters, 14 police officers, and Danville approved a 600% increase in their tax levy last week. So we're not the only ones going through this discussion. We have a flat to decreasing disbursement of personal property replacement tax. We increase in minimum funding requirements. The state is no longer giving minimum funding requirements because everybody has to have an actuary on there. On funds for money are primarily going to fire and police pension. We've increased corporate from increased police spending and also more demand for road work. And over the last 2 years, we've seen a decrease in all of the department's manpower except for one, with the proposal that we made on Public Works, which will decrease that manpower. Okay, this is the minimum requirement, 90% funding. So this is your fire pension, police pension, and IRMRF. GATS, just for your information, GATSB 6768, which is the funding liability requirements for pensions, requires 100%, but the state has set our funding at 90%. It's not meeting minimum contribution will result in a letter from the state. That's just, they've given us a warning that they are going to start looking more and more at that.
Manager Crow, would you just take a second, if you would, please, and relate to the people Gatsby 6768?
Sure.
This is a whole thing that changed about 2 years ago.
It went into effect, Director Bucus, I think it was 2015, was that right? So Gatsby 6768 says that all unfunded liabilities within any pension will be placed as a liability to the community. Prior to this, it was treated strictly as a liability to the pension boards, who were audited separately. The pensions are now audited and included in the city's audit. So when we had an individual talk about increase in liability, you've seen that increase in liability because our liability in the pensions has increased. Okay. as I said, going back, could result, the state has warned us that they're seeing, and this is particularly being driven by the unions, FOP, which is not ours, and IAFF, which we do have, are really pushing the state and the Illinois Department of Revenue to go out and give warning letters out to communities that are not meeting their minimum contributions. They are also, Harvey was the first community, but to give Harvey in perspective, they were only funding their pension funds at about 17%. They actually held back $3.5 million in state funding. I got asked, one of the aldermen at the cow asked what a quarter-cent increase in tax would generate $660,000. A quarter-cent increase in food and beverage tax would generate about $130,000. We are not proposing that here, but that's to answer the question that was asked to me during the committee of the whole. So, this is our actuarial recommendation. It's not the staff's recommendation. This is what our actuary recommended to get us up to that minimum contribution. Well, actually, this will be full contribution, 100% move, and this would be a continuous contribution over the year, over the next 4 years. This type of increase, this long-term commitment, increasing in contributions, will initially gain some savings up front, but you'll have to in the early years, because we are not, where the savings is, we're not meeting that 90% contribution requirement, and there'll have to be a constant increase. And what we looked at is the current enterprise zone when it expires. 11 million may come in. We saw a $2.2 million increase this year. 11 million may increase from the enterprise zone expiring. This does require truth in taxation. It will over the 20 years buy out our liability. If we can do it, if we don't want to increase the taxes by reducing, being a reduction in our budget, this is every year over the next 4 years. So it would be a 5-person reduction every year over the next 4 years. And this also would probably require, make sure that the pension boards require it. It does meet the minimum contribution for fire, but police will generate greater than minimum contribution, and less than 100. We as a staff do not recommend this option. So this is the less than 5% option. So you see it's a $16 increase per $100,000 of EAV. What we've done is we've taken all of the tax levy that we're doing and putting it, the increase in tax, along with the $23,000 tax levy, and all of the personal property replacement tax into fire and police pensions. There we also have a grant reimbursement. That is for the grant, actually that is in all 3 of the options. That's for the SVU grant we're getting back. They are paying the pension for that. But what this does is this fully funds the minimum requirement for police, but does not fully fund the fire pension. So this meets our requirement on one of the 2 pensions as we go forward. And at a $16 increase per 100,000. So we said fire liability will continue to grow. It'll stop. And why we picked police versus fire? Police we're under 50% funded. So that's the fund we needed to stop the bleeding on. There's no truth in taxation required on this. And then we require all the personal property tax. Where we're going to work with the library, we are actually taking $40,000 away from the library out of the personal property replacement tax. But under personal property replacement tax, fire and police pensions have a higher priority than the library. Then this also counts for incorporating, the reason we're able to move that tax levy that we have, that $143,000 out of the general fund, is the reorganization of public works that we're having to do, that we're presenting to you, that would save $201,000. So that's how we're able to move that money into fire and police pensions. Okay, here's the other 0% increase option. We do this same thing, move all of the levy into the 3 pensions, as well as the personal property replaced tax into fire and police. 0 increase. This does incorporate the 23,000 that we are seeing with the increase in EAV, the 2.2 million that we're seeing in EAV this year. And I will tell you, my discussion with all of the other taxing bodies, they are all going to increase their levy to pick up that $2.2 million increase in EAV. So we'll need, this will not meet pension liability. Liability will continue to grow. We're not going to have any truth in taxation. If we wanted to fully fund it, we would need to cut 8 personnel across over. We would need to come up with $744,248 out of the general fund, which is, equates. What we did was we looked at all of our personnel costs. The average cost per personnel in the city of Freeport is $91,000 per person. That includes all the benefits and everything else. So if we wanted to fund this out of the general fund without seeing an increased tax levy, or that is an option, we would need to cut 8 personnel across all departments. So what we recommend is option 4. However, I understand that the policy, and we're ready to execute whatever direction the council gives us tonight. So I am standing by. Director Bucas and I are standing by for questions on this.
So we'll open it up for questions.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
One thing I'd like to say as we start this out, since I've been on the council a couple days, I want to let everybody know that through the past, 12 years, let's say, the city of Freeport has paid every penny into the pensions that they've been asked to. There's never been money held back from them. We've always paid what was asked. When the actuaries had come in, we'd paid just exactly what was needed. The big thing in this that we mentioned before was when GASB 67, 68 came out, we chose to fund at 90% then, correct, instead of 100%. So that got us somewhat behind last year. But I just want to let everybody know there's nothing that's been done over the years that's got us where we're at. It's a matter of the number of retirements, the number of people that are living longer, all that kind of stuff affects this pension system. And without a doubt, we need to take a look at something to minimize the bleeding that's going to take it in the next years if we don't do anything. But just as we start off the discussion, I just want to say that beforehand, everything that's been asked to be paid has been paid.
The other thing that, as we briefed in the committee of the whole, the assumptions for return on investment. So in the past, the state was using an 8% return.